We've
All right, we're live.
dogs behind two sets of doors, and we're just praying nobody rings the doorbell.
Yep.
We'll mute really quickly. Fix it.
It's all in the, world of online Zooming. I think we're actually live on YouTube.
Sweet.
Well, I think that we have 1 minute. I'm watching for the clock to turn over. It's 12:59 my time, 9:59 Pacific time. What's going to happen? It's going to switch over and then we're going to kick this thing off. All right. It is time to start this amazing panel. We're going to be talking all about circular fashion today, really what it is and why it's important. And thank you so much, Brittany, for putting together this amazing event, the Sustainable Fashion Forum. There's so many awesome individuals and organizations who are taking part in today's event. And so I'm excited for everyone watching at home, wherever you are on your journey about learning around sustainability. I think this is a really great conversation. You're going to learn about what circular fashion is and talk to people who really live this practice every day in their businesses. So we have an amazing panel of talented entrepreneurs and communications directors and founders. And so I want to start by having Lila introduce herself from Eileen Fisher, or new.
Hi. Thanks, Lucy. I'm Lila Horwitz. I direct creative and marketing for Eileen Fisher Renew, which is our clothing take back and resale program. I'm based out of Seattle. We have half of our operations here and the other half in New York. So
great. And then we've got Chloe and Stuart from Thousand Fell.
Hi, everyone. So again, we're the founders of Thousand Fell, and we're a new circular footwear company. So we're focused on the next generation of sustainability, which is one that we see takes into account waste and is price point accessible. And we started with the first line of recyclable footwear here in the U.S.
Very cool. And Samantha from thredUP.
Hey guys, I'm Sam Blumenthal. I'm the Director of Consumer Communications at thredUP. I've been here just about 4 years now. I started out in fashion PR. I was saying just before this call started. I moved to thredUP because I'm so inspired by the mission that we have to really end fashion waste. So very excited to be talking on this panel. And for those who don't know, thredUP is a modern thrift store that's reinvented the way people buy and sell fashion. And we've also recently expanded that to our resale as a service platform, where we're inviting retailers to come in and making it really easy for them to extend resale to their customers.
Very cool. I love all the innovation. And then Angie from Rent the Runway.
Yeah, hi, I'm Angie Hellman. I'm the Senior Vice President of Brand and Customer Strategy at Rent the Runway. At Rent the Runway, we like to say that we kind of pioneered the rental concept and the idea of circular consumption outside of resale in fashion. And, we're about 11 years old. We started as a special occasion business, and now today we've expanded to rental subscription as well as some resale. And I am live from Brooklyn right now, where our headquarters are.
Amazing. You all are so cool. This is going to be a really fun panel because all these companies are really fashionable. Well, obviously they're fashion. And I think that you guys are all really innovative in what you're doing. So I think you're going to bring a lot of really cool perspective. I realized I never introduced myself. My name's Lucy Biggers. I'm the host of a series called One Small Step that really just focuses on sustainability and steps that we can all take. We look at a lot of businesses, different community organizations and things that are at the forefront of the sustainability movement. So I love to learn about these topics because I think sustainability is so innovative. It's like you're taking a problem and you're solving it. And in your all's case, you're solving it in a really creative way that gets people excited about waste, which I think isn't necessarily the sexiest thing. So props to you. I would love to know, can someone chime in, and maybe I should assign this question, but if you really feel called to answer this, what is circular fashion? Can you define for our audience just the principles of circular? Someone just jump in there.
Yeah, I can kick off, and I think it might be a little different for everybody, considering that we're kind of running the gambit across these three really important pillars of like resale, rental, and then recycling. But for us, it's really about moving away from the linear economy, which is, kind of stealing from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, where you're taking material, you're using it, and then it just goes to waste. And you're really putting that on a loop where that material is used or that product is created, it's then used, and then it's returned either to be resold or to be rented and put back into the economy again, or in our case, to be recycled, broken down into its component parts, and then put back into new product. And yeah, and really kind of the important part there is that economy piece. It's not just like collecting stuff back and then, downcycling it or putting it into something else. It's really having that sort of system where you're driving value through the back end, through customer engagement, kind of through that entire process.
Yeah. And just to quickly add to that, and I'd be interested to hear how you guys define it, but someone, it was probably on a panel just like this maybe a year ago, helped us to really unlock that idea of the circular economy. And it's not just recycling for the sake of recycling or resale for the sake of resale, but what happens and why there's so much textile waste. And maybe we'll at some point get into stats and figures about textile waste, but if you donate something, you dump a bunch of clothes somewhere, there's no value left in them.
Yeah.
But by taking care of them, mending them, reselling them, there's still value, whether it's $10 or $15, it's, still in circulation, and it has a value that either a brand or a consumer is incentivized to take care of. And the problem, again, when we just donate or just dump and send to a developing world or a third world country or end up with, a textile landfill, is we've taken the value out of that cotton or that fiber. And so what we're kind of focused on is how can we as a brand set up a structure where we still see value in the rubber, and we really want to get that rubber back and put it back into our own system, or the recycled polyester or whatever, or the cotton.
Yeah, I think it's a different way of seeing these materials and seeing that they have inherent value. Does anyone want to add to that great definition with anything else that you feel like your company brings that maybe wasn't in that definition?
Yeah, I think Stuart and Chloe, that was really well said. And at thredUP, we're addressing the part of the issue where we are making it easy for people to recirculate their clothing within the circular economy. So they're not just dumping the clothing, they know that it's going somewhere responsible to be reused and recirculated. But I think more than that, what you're talking about too is like, if you must make new clothing at this point, you have to do it in a sustainable, responsible way. So even though we're technically only addressing the end of life and the recirculation, we also think a lot about how can we really inspire and push this change that needs to happen with retailers, where they're considering the materials that they're using to create the clothing. Every time you create a new piece of clothing, you're using energy to do that. Carbon, water, waste is created. So the great thing about a circular economy, Chloe, to your point, is like when you're creating that clothing, that waste, that energy is used. And then every time you reuse that item, if you mend it, if you wear it again, if you resell it, you are displacing what you would have used to create a new item, and you're making the most of the natural resources that were used in the first place to create that garment.
I was muted. Hi. No, that's exactly a really interesting way to think about it. And I'm curious to talk to Angie from Rent the Runway. How big is the problem of waste in this sort of like high fashion area? And was that one of the main reasons why you created Rent the Runway, or was it an affordability thing? And then also like the environmental stuff, like was a bonus? Like, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think that the answer to that has evolved over time. I would say the environmental aspect has always been a part of the Rent the Runway vision, and it's just grown even more over the years. But I think that like when you kind of think about value, like more generally, I think that, in the beginning, when Rent the Runway was founded, it was like the height of fast fashion in 2009. And the sharing economy was pretty nascent. Like it was really more focused in different industries like travel with Airbnb, which was founded around the same time, or Uber with transportation. And so what we wanted to do is like, the original vision is like, you have this closet full of clothes and you constantly feel like you have to be going out and buying new things. And we just knew there was a smarter way to get dressed, and that 100% of the $2 trillion fashion industry didn't need to be brand new. And so, you know, what we try to engage in circularity across like every part of our journey as a retailer. And we know we still have more work to do, but, you know, like we kind of think about there's circularity in how a consumer can engage with what we like to call the unlimited designer closet that you can access. You know, like as I mentioned it, when I was introducing myself, like we started as a sort of, you know, one-time special occasion wear business. And now over the last, you know, 4 or 5 years, we've really evolved our product and our offerings to be more subscription. And what that allows us to do is not only allow our customers to be able to participate more in the sharing economy every single day in regards to how they get dressed, but also allow the inventory in our warehouse to be utilized more and actually get more value out of the product. And so, you know, we, you know, that's kind of like one way that, you know, we think about circularity. And then, you know, end of life is a really big one. And, you know, Sam is obviously very, the more the expert on kind of end of life than I am. But like, you know, we've always kind of participated in resale and secondhand, you know, when, and a garment is at the end of its life cycle, rent the runway, first we do everything we can to actually repair and restore our garments. We're actually like restoration experts, we like to say, in terms of trying to create or give every garment, you know, a second, third, fourth, fifth life. But once at the end of the road, you know, we want to ensure that we are diverting waste from landfill. We partner with partners like thredUP, or we actually sell on the inventory at like crazy good discounts through pop-ups and online. And so, you know, we think about circularity across like those dimensions as well as our own operations. So we're a work in progress. We know we have more work to do. We're actually currently performing a life cycle assessment across all of our operations, our partnerships, our cleaning practices, our private label manufacturing, and more.
I think that we have 4 businesses on the panel. And what I really realized is like thredUP and Rent the Runway, you all are thinking about sharing and reuse of a material. And then I feel like Eileen Fisher and Thousand Fell, you're thinking about material sourcing and end of life. And I want to get into materials in a second, but while we're on sharing, I wanted to ask thredUP and Rent the Runway, with COVID, we have all of a sudden this fear around germs. And so has that been impacted? Because I feel like I would have been all in on the sharing economy in the beginning of 2020, thinking this is just going to go forever high. And then all of a sudden everyone's obsessed with disinfecting because we have COVID. How have you, is it impacted you? And is it been good and bad? What's going on there?
Yeah, Lucy, it's so funny because every reporter asks us that question. They're like, aren't your customers, like, are they not buying anymore? Are they asking you about germs? We've not seen any indication of that among our customers. So it's like the logical question to ask, but no one's brought it up on social. Right. Like we were looking out for it in the beginning. So that's funny, and also quite frankly a relief for us. And we did a lot of research in the beginning, speaking with the CDC and other people who are familiar with like what are the risk factors here, and it's actually like not an issue. And I think that ultimately I hate to say that anything has benefited here, because COVID has been absolutely terrible. I think like all of us were talking about that before our call on a personal level, and then also just walking around our neighborhoods and seeing empty storefronts, and it's been really devastating for a lot of people. But for secondhand, it's been really, I think, great for people who love the sharing economy, who are already thrifting, and then people who had never thrifted before. Mm-hmm. So at thredUP, 70%, I believe, of our customers had never thrifted before. And that's really what we're built for, is to give people an easy way to sell their clothing if they never have before, and really try out thrift, and realize that they love it, and that it's just as good, if not better, than shopping new. And so a lot of our habits have changed over the course of the pandemic. We're all working from home, we're shopping online more than ever before, and a lot of people are trying things like thrift and resale and rental for the first time, and it seems like trends like that will potentially stick in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll just add one small thing. Oh, sorry, to
go ahead.
what Sam just said, because we had a really similar experience at Run the Runway, being really scared about the effect of COVID and thinking about kind of the sharing economy. But the two things that we've really noticed, both just in terms of our own customer research, but also looking at industry reports and analyst reports, is just the importance of value and sustainability coming out of the pandemic and emerging into a recessionary environment. Also, I think that COVID has also kind of been this, very visceral reminder about how fragile like our world is. And, I think that there's a plethora of statistics to kind of support this, about the there was actually the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which I think Chloe and Stuart, you guys mentioned earlier. They put out a report. It's just like very interesting to see the percentage of customers who are looking to reduce their clothing consumption following the pandemic, are looking more to sustainability in terms of purchasing decisions. So I think there's going to be a real lasting impact, as Sam said, coming out of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I want to go now to talk about materials, because I think that's a really big part of the circular puzzle. And Lila, at Eileen Fisher, with your Renew line, how are you deciding what passes the threshold of what you guys approve is truly in line with your values?
Well, so we have kind of like a in-company look at the circular economy within the fashion industry, and very much for us, like you're saying, we're thinking about first life, second life, and third life, and this is all happening sort of under the umbrella of Eileen Fisher with the main line. So these are the new garments that are being produced, Renew, which is secondhand, and then Waste No More, which is our kind of textile R&D program that is refiberizing and making new materials from the pieces that are damaged and can't be reworn again. So like you're saying, Lucy, it really starts with the main line. So what can they make with the most sustainable materials in mind, with deconstruction in mind? These are all the things that we learn about. A waistband needs to be tacked down because we're seeing it coming in rolled over and over again, and that's why customers are returning it, or that's why it's not staying in their closet. Like, we garner incredible information, but we have a stringent sorting process. So it's sort of like, we resell near perfect condition. We do as much repair as we can, but only to a limit. And then we sort into textile categories for third life. So depending on, if it can be refiberized, if it can be spun into a new yarn and then used back on the main line again. We had a couple great pieces that came full circle. So we'd been sending to a mill in Italy, and they had been making yarn, and then we were putting those sweaters back on the line. So for us, we're really looking like full circle on so many different levels, whether it's kind of, we use this line a lot, like next best use. What is the next best use? What is the most sustainable use of this garment next up?
And for 1,000 Fall, you guys are saying that you recycle this full circle. And I know that there's a lot of issues with recycling, just like when I think about the blue bin. So how do you guarantee that your sneakers are actually getting recycled, and what do you do with them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think when looking at sort of municipal recycling at large, the issue is really sorting and being able to maintain clean material feeds. So when you put like 15 different types of plastic in and they all just have like a different number on it, it's like really difficult for them to go to the right place. We've been really thoughtful about building clean material feeds that we can maintain. We're streamlining a lot of those materials. Like, oftentimes footwear has 20, 30, 40 different kind of component parts, all with different composites. We've really stripped that down to only a handful, so that we're in the rPET, cotton, and rubber are really our main focus. So we're able to pull those apart. We're able to put them into clean material feeds. And that's, similar to the Eileen team, like being able to mechanically recycle a lot of these, put them back into yarns and fibers, put them back into crumb rubber, and then reintegrate them back in a new product.
Yeah.
Is that something? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, to kind of piggyback off Lila's question and answer, but this really started with an obsession with material and production, because you currently, particularly with footwear, can't just recycle anything.
Yeah.
So we unfortunately aren't in a position where we could take back a shoe from another brand or manufacture a different way, take it apart and recycle it. And we spent about 2 years kind of designing into our material feeds and working with the recycling team to be able to take them apart, test batches, And your larger question, how are we guaranteeing it? There's kind of a twofold question with circular economy. It's not only how do you design something that could be recycled or that is sustainable, but then how do you get it back?
Yeah.
And so we're currently in the how do you get it back phase. And we're building that, and a lot of our focus is on reverse logistics and take back and building, communication systems with customers so that we can get back shoes. So from our first 3 months, we have just over 20% of our shoes back. We've been in market just over a year. So we're currently in the collection phase. So we've done, testing and recycling all of our material feeds. The actual first batch of 1,000 fell will be recycled this year. And we'll probably get to it later, but some of the things that make recycling work are scale. Like I cannot recycle one shoe. You can't get an RPET or a rubber recycling facility to turn on to recycle a shoe. So you need to be able to collect 1,000 or X number of pounds in order to actually economically and feasibly, turn on that material feed and process that material. So that's part of the reason that we're hyper focused on a limited number of products, a limited range, and how can we get as many people as possible bought into this mission and then recycle for 1,000 people at a time.
Yeah. And I think, is this something that if the logistics were there for other companies and they were collecting back that one product, like a shoe, like they could recycle too? It's just that nobody's ever put pressure on big companies to do that, so that infrastructure doesn't exist, kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's a million different things. It's material. Like, so for example, like just in the, synthetic leather space, up until I think 3-4 years ago, you really couldn't get a synthetic leather outside of, like PVC or PU that looked or performed similar to leather. Like the material that we're using, which is a corn-based bioresin on top of a recycled polyester. Like that was kind of a brand new development that we were working with a mill on in Italy 2 years ago. And so it's material innovation has kind of caught up, especially some of the adhesives that we've used and some of the rubber that we've used and some of the things we're looking at down the pipeline and kind of bio leather and cotton. So material really hasn't been there. And then second, it's, recycling is expensive. It's an entire new part of your business model that you have to figure out how to fund. And so Eileen Fisher, I mean, like gold standard, like so excited to be on the phone. Like that, how do you build that as a part of like customer loyalty and what's your brand value and justify putting X% CapEx into recycling. And I think if that hasn't been something you've been doing from day one as like a big fast fashion company and you're really tied to margin, I understand why that's a hard bullet to, I don't know, I'm really bad at sayings.
Hard pill to swallow.
Hard pill to swallow. So I think it's a combination of things that retail, generally, I think people look at big, bad retail companies, but margins in retail are tough. Yeah. It's not like these companies are floating tons of cash, right? Like, and understand corporate world is, corrupt and there are issues, but it's a little bit different from big banks. And profit's hard. And so we're that money to invest back into recycling. So we fundamentally believed that we needed to build it from day one into our business model. But I think Lila might have a additional input there.
Yeah,
that's what I always say. Build it from day one. Like my advice coming from, a bit of a heritage brand that's been around for a while, then picking it up in 2008 and slowly, I feel like, we joke, we started with chewing gum and duct tape. And like, that's kind of how we built this program. It was just like this slow roll. Yeah. And like you're saying, Chloe, like the infrastructure, like it's kind of, I always say it's like these two very unsexy things that build the circular economy is sorting and storage. Yeah. And those are hard things to break into, especially for a big company. And to just get your product back in the first place is tough. So I think like for us, it really worked because we're very much a community-based brand. And we have a very tight-knit community of customers. We kind of, we don't call them customers, we call it a community. Like they're very invested in the brand, they love the product, and they're constantly kind of refreshing their closets. And when we gave them an option of a place to bring it in, it was just seamless for us. So, awesome. I think we kind of built it by building something else that transitioned into that really nicely.
And for Eileen Fisher, I know that like the price point is a little bit higher than a lot of people. What's your opinion on getting sustainability to be more accessible? Is that something that is possible, or will it always be sort of niche for those who can afford it?
I hope not. I mean, I don't think that it should, it's a hard profit margin, like you were saying, Chloe, in store, like it's tough there. But you know, I think, well, I guess the conversation around value in used clothes is it runs the gamut. You have, you know, a t-shirt that's really just worth $1, and then a t-shirt that's maybe made, you know, by a small company and all organic materials, and it's hand dyed, and so it has all of this kind of other value that's been put into it, and it's maybe only been worn once. So there's all kinds of factors that change it. And you know, we like to try and offer as wide of a price point as possible. So we say like about a third of retail running to, we do these things, they're called NQP, not quite perfect sales. And they were kind of the most fun thing that we did pre-COVID. We would have hundreds of women that would come, and we would sell everything that was slightly damaged. So things that didn't quite make it into our stores or online, from $5 to $40. And people would, you know, I mean, it was incredible. It was just this like amazing event that people would load up for the whole season, and they would get all their t-shirts for $5, and they'd get these amazing organic tanks that had like maybe a small spot on them, and they could still wear them. So I think it kind of depends, like, are you looking for the perfect cashmere sweater for, you know, a business meeting, or are you looking for a silk cotton jersey t-shirt to do your gardening in, and you don't care if it's slightly damaged?
That's an interesting perspective. And I also want to note that we have a lot of great questions coming in from the viewers. So I'm going to transition to those in just a minute. But I wanted to go back to the thredUP team and Sam. And I'm curious, like, and Angie, I think you'll be able to answer this too. Like, we just talked a lot about materials and end of life and recycling. And a lot of the stuff that is going through your system isn't that. It's fast fashion, because that's what people are cleaning out their closets with. Where does the company stand in, like, almost, does thredUP give people an excuse to then buy fast fashion, you know, like, because they're like, oh, I feel good, I clean up my closet, and thredUP's taking care of it. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a real thing? And how does your company address that? And then I would love to sort of ask the same question to Angie.
Yeah. Fast fashion is terrible. It's like, it's a major root of the problem we have with the textile waste crisis, which is overproduction. So we do a lot of education for our customers around why fast fashion is terrible, why you should not buy it. Acknowledging, to your point, Lucy, like, some people can only afford fast fashion. So one thing that is really great about thredUP that we feel good about is democratizing sustainability and providing this higher quality clothing at more attainable price points. But as far as education around fast fashion, I mean, first of all, literally, like, we do panels like this, and we talk to people, and we send messaging to our customers, and we put out our resale report that talks about the brands with the best resale value and where you might get the most money or where you might want to invest. And that's apparel that is made mindfully and responsibly and made well. And we also, like, don't pay that much for fast fashion because we can't resell it for that much, if at all, and the quality doesn't hold up. It's not made to live these multiple lives that we're talking about. So it's a really multi-layered issue. I think, like, a lot, Lila and Stuart and Chloe, you've touched on a lot of pieces of this, but it really comes down to, like, our vision is a world in which we produce less and we reuse more, and we are really fortunate to be able to use the position that we have in this industry to try to affect change. And, you know, it starts with consumers really voting with their wallet and deciding where they want to spend their money and how they want to reuse their clothes, and ultimately, hopefully, buying less and buying better. And then it trickles to the retailers who are actually mass producing this clothing. And our hope is that the less people buy new from these fast fashion retailers, the less they'll be able to produce, and we can slowly start to chip away at this massive issue.
But you've made it way more mainstream, though, because I have friends who maybe are going to thredUP and they don't care about the environment. They care about the convenience. And so I think that it's always, in all of these brands, all four of these brands, like, I think the most successful sustainable brand is the one that maybe people are using it and not knowing that it's sustainable. Angie, for you as well, like with RTR, like, you guys also have, you know, maybe the materials that are on the, you know, on your site aren't necessarily like the most sustainable, but, like, where do you guys land on that issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, there's a lot of similarities between Run the Runway and thredUP. So Sam made some excellent points that pertain to us as well. I mean, the sad reality is that currently most clothes aren't produced with sustainability in mind. Like they aren't doing what Eileen Fisher and Thousand Fell are, really pioneering. And so what companies like Rent the Runway and thredUP are trying to do is just enable those non-circular materials to at least be shared by multiple people. So if that one item needs to be produced, like could it be worn by 30 people in the case of, Rent the Runway, or instead of like 30 items being produced and being worn just a few times.
One time for a fancy
and
event.
Sometimes one time or sometimes no times, it's like, so, one of the long-term goals for us at Rent the Runway is to affect change in the industry by decreasing the total amount that needs to be created in the first place. And like, I think Lucy said, it can be hard to say that you won't wear those items because they are ubiquitous. There are price points that are a lot more accessible, but like what thredUP and I think Rent the Runway has done is just provided additional access points, and you can still consume those items, but do it as part of the sharing economy. So they're just another way to be able to access those goods and hopefully to be able to get more longevity and utilization out of them.
Very cool. And I think, I think it's really exciting that there's so much buy-in for this idea now and that it is spreading so much. I mean, you all are a testament to that. I'm going to open up to the questions from the viewers because they're just a lot and they're good ones. Some of them I was going to ask myself, but if you're watching, letting you know, I'm reading them. But 2020, we had a huge reckoning in our country around social justice and climate justice, and the climate movement really started to talk about intersectionality, which was a long overdue conversation. I work in sustainability, and my show, One Small Step, is something that like one person can do. But obviously we know we need societal changes. You all exist in this place of empowering individuals to make sustainable choices, but I'm also wondering how your organizations or as individuals, you are supporting the climate justice movement and uplifting BIPOC voices who are really like at the forefront of that. If anyone wants to chime in with any initiative that they're doing or answer that.
Yeah, I would love to. I think we talk a lot about this. I mean, I know we talk a lot about this internally, that there's this really close link between environmental justice and social justice, and a lot of other like social issues that have been really pertinent kind of throughout the country this past year. I think what's important for us too is we really identify our core audience caring like incredibly deeply about these things. And the way that we look at it is kind of twofold. There's the education piece, which I think is like really valuable. Being able to give people a forum to talk, being able to give people a resource to learn more, both about, in our case at least, like how textiles and landfills are really impacting and affecting lower income and at-risk communities, oftentimes communities of color. So really being vocal about what that impact is that we're addressing at Thousand Fell. I think the other thing that we're really excited about for 2021 is how do you translate that education into action? And so I'm kind of teasing some things that I'm thinking about, but like really thoughtful, direct action that individuals can take. And I think a lot of people on this panel can probably attest to the same thing. You have people come in and watch, like, all right, great. Like I'm ready, I'm charged up. Like, what can I do? And we really want to make sure that Thousand Fell and sort of this platform that we're building is a place where you can come to take action. And that's political action, that's social action, that's being able to make like meaningful impact as an individual. I think if 2020 taught us anything, it's that small individual change can lead to like big systemic change. And that's through COVID, that's through social justice movement. So we're continuing to kind of build on that awakening a little bit. And our community is like all about that. And so we talk about being a community of activists. Yeah, super important.
That's awesome. What about anyone else?
Yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about Rent the Runway and what we've been doing. I think that what we tried to do last year was really build a sustained commitment and effort for how we can continue to uplift and support BIPOC voices, especially in the fashion industry. Where, really like uplifting these designers, these businesses, this talent is both in the moral and financial best interest of the company and of the industry rather. And so, a couple of things that we've done, which I think we announced sometime last summer, was, allocating $1 million for Black designers. And that comes to life through bringing on new designers on to Rent the Runway, like Wales Bonner, Kingsley. We've had some really amazing designer additions to our now like 700 plus roster that have been from Black designers, Black business owners, as well as through kind of like some of our wholesale initiative, or some of our co-manufacturing initiatives. And the idea is like we provide design resources, data, mentorship, financial support, to these designers. And then the second thing that we've done is, we have a really close relationship with Aurora James and have participated in her 15% pledge. Rent the Runway was actually one of kind of the early retailers to sign the pledge. And, we have accountability tracking both internally and externally around how we are tracking. And just so everyone who's not familiar with the 15% pledge, that 15% of the fashion talent, the inventory, the ambassadors that we use, the styling talent that we use, the photographers, videographers, crews behind the camera, are from the Black community.
Nice. That's amazing. And do you want to go, Sam?
Sure, yeah. So at thredUP, we touched on this a little bit, but we are really passionate about democratizing sustainable fashion. So it's not just for a specific subset of people who have the money or, the luxury of caring about the environment to the point where it extends to all of their purchases. It's not about what size you are. So we are very passionate about making it possible for every person to find attainable, relatively affordable clothing that is really good quality, that makes them feel really, really good about themselves. And then as on the creative side and as a brand, we are constantly striving to do better and to really just hand the mic to people who can use our platform for good. So really elevating other voices and Black voices and BIPOC voices to be able to speak to the issues that matter to them, and to also be able to highlight the amazing fashion that they love and can offer to everyone.
Nice. And Lila?
I'll just chime in and say, I think I also witnessed a really interesting thing happen in this last year with our company is taking more of a stand around social justice publicly. And I think there's always been sort of a bit of a internally within the brand, it's very important, but we don't talk about it externally. And that took a big turn for the better this year. And I think that's really exciting. I think I saw it not just with Eileen Fisher, but with many other companies that you no longer could sit silently on your Instagram and post product shots while there were, thousands of people taking to the streets to protest racial injustice. And I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, and seeing it we're founder led. Eileen still leads the company, and she just finally said no more. Like, I don't care if I'm offending customers. This is important, and I have to stand up for this. And so that was just an amazing kind of pivotal moment this year.
Yeah, I think it's been so great to see this movement take over and the impact that it's having. And I have some like specific questions now that are from the audience, so I'm going to direct them toward y'all. And we're coming near the end, so if you can they're kind of like yes or no's, not really, but for Chloe, is it possible for your team to team up with a large scale shoe company to recycle their shoes?
Yes, and I hope it happens, but only if we help to produce those shoes.
Yeah, right.
Can recycle
or do co-development.
Yeah,
co-development. Amazing. And thredUP, what do you do with the items that get sent to you that are labeled as they can't be resold due to quality?
Yeah, so our goal is to reuse every possible item that we can. So first and foremost, how can we get it onto our core marketplace to be reused? From there, there's tiers of use, where our ultimate goal is to ensure that things will not end up in a landfill. So we have something called rescue boxes, where we will group together items that don't meet the high quality standards of our core marketplace, but might make someone really excited and happy. Like Lila was talking about the Eileen Fisher sales, where you get things really cheap because they're not perfect. So that's a great way to think about these boxes, where we've really set out to create a modern thrift store that defies the expectations of what thrifting is. So everything on our core marketplace needs to meet our quality standards. And then in these rescue boxes, you can get items that, maybe they're missing a button, maybe they have a hole for whatever reason. But maybe you are a DIY person and you're up for the challenge and you're excited to mend these items and really make them your own. And we actually have a ton of people in our community who will get those boxes and do quilting projects and things like that. And then ultimately we work with third-party textile distributors to recirculate the remainder of the clothing.
And someone else is asking, as a consumer, can you return clothing to a brand, or is she returning to thredUP? I don't think you can return your clothes to most brands, right?
Yeah, so that's actually something that that people don't talk about enough, is this issue of returns, and how when you're buying clothing and just trying it on, you return it to the retailer, and then most of the time they can't resell it. So yeah.
So frustrating.
And people don't realize, especially now when people are buying more online and they just want to try it on and it doesn't quite fit right. So that's a problem that we are aware of and working with retailers to help them address. And I think, it really depends on the price point, but if it's something that you don't love and you just want to get out of your closet, always send it to thredUP and we'll ensure that it is reused.
Yeah, when I have a lot of friends who will order things in multiple sizes, and then they're like, oh, and I just return that I don't. And I'm like, you don't understand. That's there's billions of clothes dumped every year. But I want to open up a question to you all. And okay, you have two options for a question. Ready? Question one, how can a consumer have the most sustainable closet? Is it having, a capsule wardrobe, or whatever your answer will be? So how can a consumer have the most sustainable closet? That's one question. The other question is, what circular trend do you see emerging in 2021 that we should all, follow, or is really exciting in this topic? So I'll let you pick between those two, and I'll let Chloe and Stuart kick it off.
Oh, great.
I still don't have an answer for the second.
Okay, sorry. I put you on the spot. Someone else can go. I know that was hard.
Go. Wait, sorry. First question.
How do you have the most sustainable closet?
Yeah, this is the number one thing that we've been, that even the way that we started our journey, because we started as consumers first, we fell in love with fashion as consumers, right? Is to learn as much as possible about fabrics. I even see somebody with the recycled polyester, sad face. So we could have a whole nother conversation about why we're using RPET and how we use it. But, for us, it's start to learn and look at fabrics, try not to use blends, try not to use synthetics that haven't been recycled. Try to think about what happens during the life cycle of wash. Is this a garment you're going to wash a lot and therefore it's going to create microfiber, microplastic pollution runoff? And, look as much as possible for organic cotton, start to learn about the countries where your clothes are made. So for example, don't buy organic cotton from China right now due to labor rights. And it's one of the easiest things you can do to feel good about what you're buying. And it also starts to cut out some of the cheaper stuff that might not be good for the planet, because a lot of times that is made with those synthetics that are poorly sourced.
Nice.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say too is I buy a ton of resale. And it's, across the gambit, and it's, it allows me to be really thoughtful about what I take into my closet.
Yeah. I think half of our Christmas presents came from The RealReal and Poshmark.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. There's so many options now. Obviously, I think resale is something that has been around for a while, but it's getting this newfound interest for people who care about sustainability.
Yeah.
Angie, do you want to go? I want to know a 2021 trend, people. Come on.
Oh my gosh, that was the one I wasn't going to answer.
Oh, okay.
I'm racking my brain. I'll answer the first one, then I'm going to
okay. If you have it later, as Chloe, I saw you were going to chime in. You can chime in after. Go, Angie.
I think that Stuart, you touched something interesting, which is I think that a lot of what we are hoping to what we're setting out to do, at least for Around the Runway, and I think thredUP, you've done an amazing job of this, just educating. I think that there's not a lot of information out there for consumers to make smart choices. You really have to seek it out, and then it's not just information, but also there are our public systems sometimes aren't even set up to support the volume that we need to achieve circularity in terms of what we wear. Like, there's that very well-known stat about recycling. Only like 9% of the plastic that gets recycled actually gets recycled. So, I think that in terms of kind of how you might build your own version of the most sustainable closet, it's doing research. At the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which was mentioned a few times, is an amazing resource. We look to them a lot, as I'm sure a lot of our other people here on the panel do, in terms of looking to them for authority and guidance. And kind of more tactically, I think it's a blend. Like for me, probably, obviously I'm biased, I work in the industry, but I do a blend of like trying to rent, obviously, to buy resale and secondhand, participate in that, in terms of being able to donate inventory, and then also looking for sustainable materials in terms of what I buy, and really think about if I'm gonna buy something, what is a real utilization I'm gonna get out of it. So kind of think about like capsule wardrobe, which has fundamentally changed how my closet at home looks like compared to what it did 5 or 10 years ago. It's a lot smaller.
Buy what you're gonna wear. Sam, what do you think?
So we've really seen over the past 10 years, when thredUP first started, secondhand was very stigmatized, and people didn't understand how to sell the clothes that were in their closet. There was no good way to do it, and people were thrifting, but they weren't talking about it. So something that we're really excited about, in particular this year, 10 years later, is that people are getting really loud and proud about thrifting, and it's less about the really conspicuous label that you're wearing and more about being conscious with your consumption and showing that as a real fashion statement and badge of honor.
I love that.
Yeah.
And Lila, what do you think?
Okay, I have a trend for you.
Yes.
I think resewn, so new clothes made from old clothes. 2021 is the year. And I think they're going to be crazy because we've all been cooped up. And when we go out, we're going to want crazy clothes or we're going to want sweatpants.
I love that. And it's interesting to see the trends, like how they get impacted by what we've gone through. I've seen this trend that's like maximalism, where it's just like over the top and gaudy. And I'm like, I'm here for this. This is like, we were in that minimalism era for too long. Let's go over the top. I love that. So, and you guys have a lot of that on in your Renew on your website, right?
Yeah, that's something that we've been working on for years. And it's kind of like a slow roll, but we're constantly looking at, how much we can cut and sew into new garments. Can they begin to replace things on the main line? Is there kind of a full circle there?
It's really cool.
And then also I'll say, like, it's hard to do research about sustainable brands. It takes a lot of time. People are busy. People are tapped out. I think like if you don't have the time to do that, buy it used. Just go straight to that. And then I also think you can think about your clothes in sort of two different directions. So if you're shopping just for fun or like to fill a void in your life, that is my thing. I'll own it first. Fill the void.
We all have a void because of COVID.
Yeah. I think then looking on used sites. So I think like what thredUP and RTR are doing is fantastic. They're making that barrier to entry really easy for thrifting and making that feel very normal. And then if you're invested in, knowing I need some new sneakers, now I'm going to do the research. Like if it's a need and you're not just doing it for fun, go do that heavy research. Or do that if you're into it. But yeah.
And going back, I feel like Chloe, you had a trend, but maybe not.
I think, Lila, your trend is a little bit more fashion focused, which is probably where you were thinking, Lucy. There were two things that kind of came to mind. We're watching, but one is, and I see H&M in the comments here, H&M launched a pilot program recycling t-shirts in a store in Europe through the Billy system. They don't mention the Billy system, but I'm pretty sure it's the Billy system out of Hong Kong. And I think one trend we'll see is just new recycling technology, new material technology. Like we're constantly looking at it, like what's next? What should we test next? And I think it'll be interesting to see how big brands, because circularity, like versus 2 years ago when we started this, nobody knew what it meant. And now it's started to be, and I don't want it to be, but it's becoming a buzzword. And if H&M can say that they're recycling, but really what are they recycling? One shirt every 8 minutes? How much energy is it taken? Is that actually at scale? Like
Right.
I'm interested to see, I don't actually have like all the words, but how these big companies will launch their pilot lines to check a box for circularity versus what technology we're actually able to start bringing to scale.
Right.
And then another trend that we're, maybe not a trend, but a zeitgeist change.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. What I think we're probably all hopeful to see is we here in the US have a new administration in place. And yeah, right.
Oh, I'm so relieved.
And I'm hopeful for the next 4 years that we'll see shifts in policy that enable, better practices around import, export, labor, materials, maybe even that can be used,
Clean
and
energy, like all of it.
Yeah.
like how things are produced, like in sustainable fashion. Hopefully, this leads to some meaningful change, and so it's part of kind of what we're thinking about on the action side, and hope to get to work with all of you to do that.
It's an exciting time, and seeing just the first few, I guess, 2 weeks of the presidency and all of the executive actions he's taken on climate change. I'm like, oh, I feel so relieved. We still have a lot of work to do.
Or at least we're part of the Paris Agreement again.
I know. We were basically at the bottom. We could only go up, and we've gone up, which is really nice. But we also went over a little bit because I think we could probably talk for 5 hours because you all are so smart. I don't think we were able to get to all the questions, but thank you all so much. And thank you, Brittany, for putting on this event, the Sustainable Fashion Forum. And she's got another event coming up in April that you all need to keep track of because I know it's going to be a good one as well. So thank you, Brittany. And thank you to all of our amazing guests. I really appreciate you all.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you.
Everyone. This was a joy.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.